Ugh, this guy even looks like a corporate simp.
But unfortunately, research teams at YouTube have found there's this whole other use for disliking a video that I had never experienced as a creator, and you may not have either. Apparently, groups of viewers are targeting a video's dislike button to drive up the count, turning it into something like a game with a visible scoreboard.
Do you mean dislike bots? That already sounds like something only a bum in their basement would say, because their entire living is based off of the internet.
And it's usually just because they don't like the creator. That's a big problem when half of YouTube's mission is to give everyone a voice.
Is everyone making a mental note of this? I already have.
So earlier in 2021, YouTube experimented with making the public dislike count private to see if it would help reduce these coordinated dislike attacks across the platform. And after analysis, they did see a reduction.
And Matt, do you happen to have any of that data? Or is this yet another dude just trust me declaration?
So the update from YouTube is that the dislike button is staying, but the dislike counts will now be private.
You see how he just spazzed out there? Even he had trouble delivering this pathetic news.
You can still dislike videos, and that action will be used to tune your own recommendations, but you won't be able to see the dislike count. Only the creator can find it on the back end if they want.
So despite all of this, if they can still ultimately see their dislike count, what was ever the fucking point of doing any of this, let alone bothering with any and all of this faceless research you claim you did with this feature?
Now, a few common questions we saw from the initial experiment. First, without a public dislike count, how can viewers tell if a video is worth watching? Again, I kind of have this question too, but it turns out that while viewers might use the dislike count to give them a sense of a video's worth, when the teams looked at the data across millions of viewers and videos in the experiment, they didn't see a noticeable difference in viewership, regardless of whether they could see the dislike count or not.
Nice dodge there, Matt. But can you answer the fucking question? The question didn't ask about the viewership of these videos that you won't be able to see the dislike count in. They wanted to know, because believe it or not, it does matter to people, how they'll be able to discern if the content is worth their time or not. Because you know what you did with this arbitrary safe space you're providing for all of these delicate snowflakes crying about their mental health on the internet of all places? You removed that very transparency they are lamenting.
In other words, it didn't really matter if a video had a lot of dislikes or not, they still watched.
Once again, Matt, you shoot yourself in the foot. If it ultimately doesn't matter, why are you hiding the dislike count? Yeah, I get that content creator health bullshit you're trying to peddle, but then you turn around and say that the viewership and all of these discrepancies to the content creator didn't change. But then you mention this faceless data that claimed to show an improvement. You are all over the place with these contradictory mental gymnastics. The whole idea is to remove the dislike count to make these insecure losers feel better about themselves, because we can't have them see a single dislike on the video or too many. You gotta encourage better viewership, but then you admit that with this change, nothing much changes. And on top of all that, if it bothers these delicate people enough, they can still go and look for all of that damning information.
If creators can still see the dislike count on the back end, how's that any different? They can see it if they look for it inside Studio Analytics under the Engagement tab. But overall, it's much less likely to cause stress and embarrassment if the count isn't visible to the public.
Thank you, Matt, for once again verifying me calling the bullshit you and the corporation you're simping for is trying to sell. I get it.
Yes, they can ultimately see it, but in order to prevent them from jumping off a bridge or something, we're gonna make sure they don't see it right away.
Because YouTube Rewind got lots of dislikes? No.
Yeah, who the fuck do y'all think you're fooling after all this time, 10 years in the making of doing those year in review videos? Did YouTube not do a YouTube Rewind for 2020? Don't think you're sparing yourselves next month either.
Now, this again is about protecting all creators and making sure they have a chance to succeed and feel safe in doing so.
Safe from what, Matt? What immediate danger are they in? You mean surfing the internet is the equivalent of a bullet in the back of your head? Do you know how accountability works? The fact that you pussies are protecting people who should be well aware of how the internet works just really makes it look like you're the ones trying to protect yourselves from the internet.
Keep in mind, other platforms don't even have a dislike button.
And I don't think his nose can get any browner than that. YouTube, it doesn't look like you're pumping out that update fast enough to protect yourselves. And yeah, once again, we have another platform that is terrified of this classic and harmless thing called criticism. I don't know about you all, but I'm surprised that it took them this long to go through with this feature. I heard about it earlier this year, and I don't even think I saw any changes on my channel. This has been a trend on social media. You see it with all kinds of social media like YouTube, Twitter, any of those bitch-made platforms that are not only afraid of their own fucking shadow, I can imagine, but they are very ban happy over the stupidest shit. But Matt here claims that YouTube wants to protect people and give everyone a voice when it comes to delicate shit like this. All this is glorified censorship and systematic censorship. YouTube, just like plenty of other punk ass platforms out there, are nothing more than pussy whipped forms of social media designed to be a safe space and bubble for cry bullies. They want to protect these people from the mean old world, shit like criticism and all kinds of things that are meant for character development. But what they're instead doing is stunting that character growth. They let all of these wimps know that it's okay to cry out in public for everyone to see, so they can hand you a Kleenex to cry in and their jacket to blow your snotty nose in. These delicate snowflakes cannot be bothered by any form of discomfort. Speaking of mental health, if YouTube truly thinks that they are helping mental health in any way with shit like this, they are sorely misguided. All they're doing is coddling these cry bullies. You're giving them that false sense of security that the world revolves around them, and the only things that exist are the things that they want to hear. Instant success that you don't have to work for, no hurt feelings, no disappointments, no failures, and all of that other illusory bullshit that's going to pump up their ego but give them that much needed self-esteem at the expense of a failed reality check. Guess what happens when they get that rude awakening? Remain tone deaf. And you got a knack for that, don't you, YouTube? Which is why you perceive all of this as some kind of threat against someone's mental health, because of course it's the easiest thing to do when you ignore reality. Oh, and by the way, if you're going to combine mental health and the internet in the same sentence, YouTube, disable that shit permanently. Fighting the dislike count is just another chapter in YouTube's delicate novel. YouTube is way more vaginal about what you say in comments in videos. They pick and choose, thanks to this terrible filter that polices your comments, what you can say. So much for that bullshit where they claim they want to give people a voice and protect them, but yet they police you and your words in YouTube comments, completely shelving the bullshit they're trying to sell once again. So there's that systematic censorship that YouTube is also pulling. And if you're all about the censorship, YouTube, you can't turn around and say that you want to give people a voice and protect them when you're nuking their voices in YouTube comments to begin with. Until you learn how freedom of speech actually works and quit pretending that people should be held responsible for those choosing to indulge with that freedom of speech, you don't get to peddle that we want to give everybody a voice and protect them horse shit. And what about shitty content creators, YouTube? Don't you know you're rewarding them as well? You could have content creators that are just quite frankly mediocre. You're giving them a safe space, but you can't protect one crowd and abandon the other one. That's some half-ass mission statement. Protect people and give them a voice, but at the expense of things like integrity and accountability. Again, mental health and the internet do not belong in the same sentence. You're not being a very good teacher. You're not teaching people that they are completely responsible with what they choose to waste their brain cells and energy on. You're not teaching them how the internet works. You're not teaching them to be humble. crappy content creators who have a monetized platform, you're allowing them to hide their dislike count. Going back to one of those questions in this video, again, people aren't going to know what they're viewing because you took away the integrity of what they're viewing by hiding the dislike count. You're glorifying clickbait and all other kinds of shit posts now that you've given them the green light to hide all of that garbage behind a disabled dislike count. Bravo with the protections, YouTube. I'm willing to bet that that so-called half of your mission statement either means to protect and give a voice to all of these crybullies at the expense of accountability and integrity, or integrity and accountability was never a part of your mission to begin with. All of these pussy whipped platforms are matching the sign of the times by providing a safe space, a bubble for all of these delicate people who actually require a witness protection program against words on their screen, social media, and the internet as a whole. I know all about how people love to try and manipulate aspects of YouTube, as I've had my fair share of mama's boys who have nothing better to do with mommy's keyboard. I've been a victim of dislike botting, as you can see here. Within a few moments, 18 artificial dislikes went down to 1, as the views went up from 86 views to 355 views. I took that in stride. I flexed my big dick about the whole ordeal and laughed at it. So I'm not gonna pretend this had any effect on my mental health, because the real world is so much worse than watching a bunch of numbers on the side of a fucking thumbs down icon go up artificially at that. Get the fuck out of here with that safe space bullshit, YouTube. That's also a reminder that YouTube does this thing, as evidenced by this, where they monitor artificial and legitimate likes and dislikes. So again, why is this necessary? The same hashtag rent-free mama's boys brainlets even sit around hoping to catch me upload something for them to immediately dislike. Sure, I'm only one guy, but this delicate world could use some thicker skin and its engagement, because the same retards even created multiple burner accounts in an attempt to affect my mental health poorly by harassing and trolling me, but yet they can't get the taste of my dick out of their mouths, as they ultimately do the same thing my subscribers do: support my channel. And here's yet another reminder, YouTube, but have you forgotten that we can just disable comments and ratings altogether? You know, the same ones that these crybullies can ultimately still see if they go looking for them. It's only gonna get worse on these bitch-made platforms. People have gotten so fucking delicate that you have to hide numbers right next to a thumbs down icon in an heroic attempt to prevent people from developing suicidal thoughts from words, discomfort, and ultimately the internet of all places.